Okay, thank you everyone for again joining the continuation of our Expert OpenAir Users webinar series. Today's topic is Advanced Project Management, along with some information about Earned Value Management and some wizards that you may or may not know about or what they can do in the system. So our agenda today is going to be just what is the definition of project management and what can happen in OpenAir to meet that definition. We'll go through some budget management. We did do a previous expert webinar series strictly on budget management, so I kind of recap that just a bit here because that is a big piece of project management. And we're also going to talk about schedule management, more from a tips and tricks perspective, and how you can leverage some shortcuts in the system to help maintain schedule information. Then we're going to go into earned value management and what that means and how it works in OpenAir. We'll talk about some wizards, and I do throw some reporting information in this at the end, and then we'll wrap it up with some questions. So let's talk about what project management is. In my opinion, project management actually is three key aspects. Of course, there's many dimensions to these aspects. You may have scorecards that you use. Of course, there's risks and issues and all kinds of supporting information, but it comes down to sort of three things in my mind. Budget management, which is hours, effort. Are we exceeding the estimate of work that's to be required? Of the schedule, are we meeting deadlines? Are we working in a time frame that we expected the work to get completed? And of course, customer satisfaction. Some people will also say there's a fourth one, which is team morale. And I love to track that too. But ideally, as long as everything is going well and the customer's happy, your team's going to be happy, as long as you don't have to work too many weekends. The OpenAir system is really structured around being able to manage your budget very, very well as far as effort and how much has been actually worked against projects, tasks, and so forth. Scheduling is a little more difficult, but there are ways to do the scheduling within OpenAir. In some cases, if you have very detailed project plans, we'll get into sort of tips and tricks on how to leverage that, how to leverage OpenAir and still be able to manage a very detailed project plan. And customer satisfaction actually can be tracked in OpenAir, but it's more of a manual tracking, and I'll give you some ideas if you want to think about implementing something like that in OpenAir. Let's start with the budget management piece. Budget management, really there's multiple levels of complexity that are available within an OpenAir configuration. So some of these may sound very familiar, but the basic level, absolute basic level is this project's going to take 120 hours. That's it. That doesn't really give you a lot of leeway as far as tracking granularity other than timesheet data. So many people go to tasks and be able to track effort down to the task level. And when you deal with task level, at least now you have a breakout of effort by activity or by work package or work stream or whatever your terminology or methodology may be. So the task level is how you can assign effort for each activity within the project. Make sure there's no questions. Okay. Then the next advanced level is being able to say, okay, well, I do have a discrete activity, but I need a person to work 10 hours on that and a different person to work 5 hours on that. So that's sort of person-level budget management. Okay. Person-level budget management is a little more advanced in OpenAir, and what that allows you to do is explore more options regarding project management, such as estimated and remaining hours, and also complements the earned value activity that we're going to talk about in a second. So here's the task level. I skipped the project level because that's real basic. The task level basically says, I don't know, discovery or writing a deliverable or meeting with the customer. It has a discrete amount of effort that's required, but you can assign multiple people to it. And if you do that, what happens is the plan of hours is spread evenly across those people. One field that's on the assignments you may have noticed is the percentage of users' time. And that percentage of users' time is really going to drive your schedule, the amount of time it will take you to complete the effort based on how much time each day you can work on it. For example, an 8-hour effort, if I was working full-time on it, would take me 1 day, according to my U.S. calendar. If I was working half-time on it, it would take me 2 days. Quarter time on it, 4 days, so forth and so on. So that percentage of users' time really doesn't control the spread of effort across people. It controls the calculated start and end date of a task. But the planned hours are already spread evenly across whoever's assigned to the task. Okay? So there's a bit of a trade-off there. You can very quickly add budget hours to your tasks if you use this method by simply putting the planned hours on your task grid. And if you're not familiar with the task grid, let me go into the system. We'll go into this project here. And this is the task grid. Some of your systems may call it the worksheet. And what you can do is when you're using planned hours at the task level, you can actually add planned hours as one of the columns here, and now you have a very quick way to update the planned hours against each of these tasks. Fantastic. The trade-off, however, is that the 28 hours in this example, if I assign 4 people to it, everyone gets 7 hours. Okay, there's really no compromise there. Now, if we're looking at the roll-up of hours at the project level, you can see in this example there's 16 planned hours. But if I went down to the task level, I can see that each task is spread evenly for 8 hours apiece. More complicated project plans would have more tasks and more planned hours variation, potentially. So the next level I mentioned is user level assignment, giving each person who's going to work on that task or activity an amount of time to work on that task. So in this example here, Paul May is being assigned 8 hours for this task. Okay? This choice gives you much more control down to the person level, but again, there is a trade-off here. The trade-off is that it takes a little bit more maintenance to enter this information because you can't just open up a worksheet or a grid and throw 8 hours on it. You have to enter assignments. Assignments are a couple of clicks to be able to add a person and an effort to the project task. And then as the effort is added, as many people as are assigned to the task, it rolls up to the amount of effort for the whole task itself. So in the example of the system I'm working with right now, I have the option turned on where I'm assigning effort by person, which does require me to do assignments. I have to do assignments. And so when I do an assignment, I'm assigning effort per person. In some of these cases, I'm not assigning this person to do anything, so I'm not sure if they get any budget. And when I hit OK, that's 16 hours that will roll up to the effort of the task. Okay? I can't just add 16 and then figure out how to divide it. I have to actually do the assignments directly in the system. So when you're thinking of comparing these two approaches, one shortens administration, but you lose some accuracy. The other is increased accuracy, but it does require some more administration. That is a common trade-off in a lot of systems and throughout the theme of making sure that you're streamlining your project management and methodology to what you actually need to get out of the system. Okay? And here's the example of the roll-up again. But, you know, when we talk about budget management and we go down to the person level, what we do find in cases is that we want people to say, you know what, I really need more or less effort to complete this task. You've given me 12, thank you very much, but I do need 16, 20, 24, or, you know, it only took me 4, I don't need the other 8. Okay? That's a refinement in the budget, and that's a refinement in estimated effort to complete the project, or EAC. The remaining hours is how you can actually control that. Some of you have this feature turned on, I'm sure. And what that allows people to do is, even through their timesheet, they can say, okay, I see I have 10 hours left to complete this task. I need at least 24. You can put in there, I need 24 more hours or 24 remaining hours, which will adjust the estimate of hours to complete the project task. Okay. How this works together is that it gives a feedback loop to the project manager and also can control percent complete calculations on what it takes to finish this task. It will also allow you to keep the original plan of hours so you can see what the original plan was and how it's comparing to the estimate at completion. I use this feature in my system. And as I look at the effort plan here, you can see that I have plan of hours. I have hours that have been worked and approved, but then you'll see my estimate and remaining. And really what you want to do is kind of compare how your plan is working against your estimate. And according to this, at one point in time, there was a refinement that said, you know what, we really don't need all of this effort. We can come in later to get stuff done. But as you can see from the remaining hours, I started to go negative, which means that estimate was not very good, and I really need to adjust my estimated hours to adjust my percent complete. When you use estimated and remaining hours on a project plan, you can control it in two different places. One control is on a timesheet, and another control is on the task itself. And on the task itself is how you can basically override the feedback from people putting time on their timesheet. And when you override it, it's going to override it to readjust the estimate the next time the person touches the timesheet in there. Of course, they can always put feedback back in to say they need more time or less time. You can continue to override it as a project manager. This really is an advanced aspect of project management within OpenAir, and it does come with trade-offs as well. When you are working with estimated hours and remaining hours, there are some reports that support the reporting of this information, but it's usually reporting it at the task level or at the project level. The reporting right now is limited when it comes to person level, and that's really where a lot of people want to get more information. So if you're looking at, well, maybe this estimated remaining will help me figure out how much budget each person has left to burn, you'll run into some limitations on how to configure those reports. If you're looking at it from just in effort, task activity type activity level management, and what's left to finish this task, the estimated remaining can provide reports that are very useful. But too often I do run into people that they really like to use this estimated remaining, but they're expecting to be able to see Jody has 12 more hours to finish on this project according to the remaining hours, and that information unfortunately is not able to be retrieved from a report. You're better off using more of a planned and approved with a gap. And gap hours are something automatically computed based on planned minus worked. Another thing with the remaining hours, even since it is advanced, there are some things to watch out for. Remaining hours should never be negative, and the system won't stop it from going negative, as I showed you. Why don't you want it to be negative? Well, negative hours means suddenly you're giving hours back, or you're turning the hands of time backwards. There's really no such thing as negative time. So when you start seeing this red with the negative effort, you're over budget. That's an over budget situation, and you really need to sort of reforecast or readjust what your estimate is to finish this project. For example, in this remaining here, I went over by 15 minutes. If I wanted to say, okay, obviously I'm probably not going to do much more work for this, I go into the task and say, okay, I'm just going to reset this to 0. Jeremy is done. And now my remaining is blank and I don't have any more work. This, some of these negatives are impacting the estimate, which of course is then turning around and impacting my percent complete, and I really need to make sure the percent complete is accurate. So this is where a lot of people will say, but I need to see the estimated and remaining hours per person. You can't. You can see at the task level. You can get reports at the task level. You can see the negatives here. But you have to keep an eye on it as a project manager by coming into this data view quite often and making sure this remaining hours doesn't go negative. Okay. Gap hours, you can't control gap hours other than adjusting the plan. It's really what you planned, what you've worked, and if you've blown the budget or not. There's little control over gap, much more control over estimated and remaining. Now, one of the challenges with estimated and remaining is the roll-up factor. And the reason I say that is if you look at this plan and you look task by task, you see that some tasks are not even started, some tasks are way over budget. Obviously effort's getting moved around as I'm managing this project. And it's very telling when I look at it in this detailed view. But if I switch my view to a project list view, and I get a remaining effort here, this 130 is a bit misleading. Yes, it still looks bad, and it's still negative, but if you looked at the detail behind that remaining hours or that roll-up, you see just how uneven everything is. Certain tasks are way over, certain tasks are way under. Okay. What would even be more misleading is if I basically zeroed out this effort here. And now went to the project level, and now I see a positive effort remaining. To me, that says, oh, the project must be on budget, it must be on track. But if you look at the detail, you can see that some tasks are very much out of whack. So when you're using estimated and remaining, just be careful on relying on that remaining effort being rolled up, because it may be a bit misleading. And with that gives you a nice lead-in into earned value. Okay. So what if the remaining hours, what if I as a manager don't have the time to go through and open up each of these project schedules? What if I want to understand, are we actually on track or not to finish this project? So earned value would give you that, but earned value does require that you also do schedule management. So we just talked about budget management and how budget management gives you the ability to track effort. If I budget 16 hours, how do I go over it? And like I said, that was a whole topic of a webinar, and it's still a very big topic. But the schedule management is the other piece. When am I supposed to be able to do that budget? Okay. Schedule management is something that can be done in OpenAir, but there are shortcuts on how to do it effectively with minimized administration. And the reason I say that is I'm used to using Microsoft Project. Microsoft Project is very easy to link things together, change a date, ripple it through, resource level, do all kinds of crazy things, and the dates sort of just adjust themselves according to certain aspects of the configuration of your product. In OpenAir, it can do the same thing, but it takes many more interactions with the system, many more pop-ups, windows, clicks to get where you need to go. Okay, and this is where, when I talk to many of you in the field on the project management side, this is where there's a desire for improvement in the system. So I thought what I would do as far as this webinar is to kind of give you some tips and tricks on things to consider that would help your schedule management activities. Okay. The first and foremost is to set up templates. Many of you do have templates set up. Those templates are sort of prescribed. Here's what our typical engagement looks like, or maybe it's a typical task plan according to the type of offering or the type of delivery engagement that you're doing. And it's already set up. You've taken the time to set things up, saying, we can't deliver this deliverable until the workshop is done. We can't, do data migration until the data is given to us. So there's predecessors already set up in the system, or perhaps you're using some standard project plans. That's one of the best tips that I can give you guys. But I also hear quite a bit from the field that, well, all of our stuff is very unique. All of our projects, we don't really have a pattern. You know, obviously there's A, B, and C, but it could be all kinds of, you know, A, B's, and C's. In that case, what you really want to focus on is just setting up a task structure that makes sense and putting some predecessors in place. Because if you change one date, then the ripple effect will happen, and that's what the predecessor tool should be able to do. Now, if you have a much more complicated plan, or you don't like to use the predecessor interface, which we'll talk about in a second, you can consider using the Microsoft Project Connector, the OpenAir Microsoft Project Connector. It does allow you to take your Microsoft project plan, import it, and it will respect all of the predecessors that you've set in that project plan. Very quick and easy way to get something into the system and then manage it from that point forward in OpenAir. Another thing, though, that a lot of people aren't aware of is when you first get your system, your provision system, you probably see that the tasks have a start date, but they don't have an end date field. And maybe when you're talking to other customers, they're like, oh, well, we just enter an end date. Actually, that's an internal switch to actually display the end date on a task. So if you don't see that right now and you wish it was there, you can get it there. You just have to email OpenAir support, and they can add that end date to the task. Likewise, with the planned hours shortcut that I mentioned about the budget, if you put planned hours at the task level, you can just throw that planned hours on the task grid and make it very quick and easy to update plan of hours per task by just using that task grid or that worksheet. The same concept goes here. Add the start and end dates. Have that be something that you can just type into very quickly. The more people feel that they're working in Excel, I find the easier people can keep the data up to date, just because Excel is such a popular tool out there in the world. And there's a lot of screens in OpenAir that can mimic the feel of Excel, so we'll show you an example of that. And of course, the last schedule management option is you're not using the task structure at all in OpenAir. You're ignoring that altogether for start and end dates because you're doing all of your resource management and your team management with the resource functionality called bookings. Okay, I don't go into that too much here because that's 2 or 3 other webinars altogether, but that is an alternative. You know, not necessarily managing the schedule from a project perspective, but managing the schedule from a team perspective, and that's really a dependency on resource management in the system. Okay. But first and foremost, as I go through some of these tips and I show you some screenshots to consider, the key in OpenAir is to keep the phases and tasks simple. Microsoft Project, for example, is a great tool to put thousands and thousands of lines of detail into it. OpenAir is not an appropriate tool to put thousands and thousands of lines of detail in your project plans. If they can roll up to phases or discrete tasks that are maybe 40, 80 hours in length, that I think is a manageable activity. Depends on how big your projects are. Lots of dependencies in this conversation here. But it should be rolled up to the level that people can put their time in accurately, but to a detailed level that the PMs are able to manage the budget correctly, right? So that's a very fine line. That's a very subjective line depending on your PM's abilities, the type of project you're dealing with, the length of the project you're dealing with, lots of dependencies regarding what is an appropriate project schedule. And you know, I find if you have some kind of methodology, the very minimum that you want to enter is the phases of that methodology, very, very minimum, so that you get some kind of metrics. Beyond that, it's really very dependent on the type of project you're dealing with. Okay. So here's if you're didn't know about the predecessor function, it comes automatically in the system. And it's a field on the task form right below the notes field. It's called predecessors, and when you click it open, what might not hit you right away is you actually have to basically identify the task that the one that you're on is linked to. Then you can use the various predecessor type connections. Does this one start at the same time as the other one? Does it start when the other one finishes? That's the most typical finish to start. Does it start at the same time as the one it's linked to? And then lag days is, you know, is there an offset? You know, does it start 3 days after the other one starts? Things like that. Okay. So definitely something when you're working with individual projects, to go through and kind of set up the task plan and set up all these predecessors one by one, that is time consuming. It's a sort of a minimal benefit for investment of time for your PMs. That's where project templates come in. So if you already have a template and you copy that over, all of these predecessors are already set. So that saves a lot of time right there. Okay. The other way to get these predecessors in very quick is to use the Microsoft Project Connector. That is a feature that you can download from the administration module. And what it does is it basically gives you a plug-in into Microsoft Project. Okay, so here's a Microsoft Project plan. And you'll see here in the upper left there's a little menu that allows me to push this project plan into OpenAir. The push of the project plan, you'll see I already have some predecessors set here. 4 starts at the same time as 3, so forth. When you push it into OpenAir, the predecessors will automatically be set. This is a really nice way to kind of just dump your project plan in and start working with it in OpenAir instead of creating everything from scratch. Okay, a nice shortcut there. So copy a template or push it in with Microsoft Project. In any case, if you are doing predecessors on the fly or you have to make some tweaks to your project plan once it's in OpenAir, I do suggest that you enable the project manager to initiate recalculation. That's a little checkbox that can show up on your project so that you can force it to recalculate % complete and the dates. Whenever you make a change to a task and save it, it would automatically start recalculating. But some people just want to make sure that it actually has recalculated and not wait for any kind of time delay perhaps with the user interface, so you can initiate recalculation that way. The other options are, like I said, the end date on the task. If you don't see an end date on your task, then you don't have this switch turned on. It is an internal switch, and really it's just another date field. But what it allows you to do is sort of force the start and end date to be a specific value, okay, instead of relying on that percentage of user time. And if we want to go and look at that in the system, and I have this turned on because I like to use this end date feature. This percentage of user time is really just driving your schedule. So if you want to adjust things to be a little more accurate, just type in the start date and the end date, and you'll see that what it'll do is anyone that has planned hours, it'll adjust their percentage of time, and this person has to work 16 hours a day in order to meet this schedule that I put in there. If I erase it back out again, it's going to adjust it back, and he'll go back to 100%, and then that will compute an end date that's now 2 weeks out, 7/15. Okay? So that end date field is actually very helpful, and when you have the end date field on here, because you can manually override it, then you can also add it to the worksheet, and that is a really nice shortcut here. So you can type the start date, end date in here and save it. So this is what I was saying. Anything that looks close to Excel might be easier for people to deal with. They don't have to click into each task. They can just come to this worksheet and quickly adjust start and end dates here. And if you have the predecessors, perhaps they only have to adjust one start and end date or one end date, and then the predecessors would recompute the dates along the way. Just to kind of, as a reminder, anything that has a blank date, OpenAir will calculate an actual date for these fields. If there's no predecessor, it defaults to the start date of the project, and then the end date would be a default of 100% of your time against the plan of hours. Okay. So if there's no predecessors, these all basically could start on the same day. In these cases, I have some manual overrides. So you can manually control it. You can let OpenAir calculate it. But really, one of the best shortcuts is either use Microsoft Project to get those initial dates, dependencies into the system to be able to manage your schedule effectively, or to enable the start date, end date on the worksheet so you can do manual adjustments. And above all, keep the plan simple as you can without losing too much accuracy. So once you have a budget in place, once you have a schedule in place, the only other piece of effort that you need, a piece of information that you need in the system to accomplish earned value is a cost value per hour per person. Okay. If you don't have a cost value per hour per person, if it's a standard, everyone's $50 an hour or something, earned value still will work. it's got some limitations because unless everyone's actually paid the same, you may have some accuracy issues. But earned value is really based on what did you plan to spend cost-wise in a time frame, and how much did you spend, okay? And based on just answering those two questions, you come up with a number of earned value metrics, they're called, and two of the key ones that I highlight and are easy to sort of comprehend are SPI and CPI. Okay, so SPI is Schedule Performance Index, and CPI is Cost Performance Index. There are many others. We're going to see a screenshot and an example in just a second. Cost variance, budget variance, percent earned value complete, all very useful metrics. But these are the two telling ones that say, are you on track with your budget and on track with your schedule? Two of the three main things that you're trying to manage when you're managing a project, right? The only thing that's not in this list is the customer satisfaction. Okay. So the reason I like the CPI and SPI is because it's a single value and it's either greater than 1 or less than 1. And if it's less than 1, it's pretty much bad news. And if it's greater than 1, then you're ahead of the curve. Okay, so less than 1 for the cost index means you're going to go over budget. You're spending way too much cost and against what your plan is, so there's an expectation that you will go over budget. Schedule means that you're not completing activities as soon as you're supposed to, according to the plan of the effort. So you are behind schedule. Okay, so you can be right on track with cost, but behind on schedule, and vice versa. So these are really two nice indices to leverage, but it requires that you have a budget of effort, cost for those people to do the effort, and you have to maintain the schedule, which is why those tips on how to keep the schedule managed is important. The earned value metric does support the 2 levels of task assigned hours. So if we do a task with 28 hours and there's 4 people on it, everyone gets 7, earned value can still be used against that. Of course, the accuracy will only be as accurate as the fact that you've added 4 people to the task and everyone shares in that pool of effort. Okay. But it's even nicer to use it when you're using user assigned hours, because the user assigned hours level definitely gives you that control of who's doing what when, and of course they specifically have a cost, so now you know exactly when that person's going to earn that cost. So here's an example. A project that we've been working on, it's the example that we've been using so far already. It's over budget, and you could tell that because the original plan, we've worked too many hours already. But if you look at the percent complete, as far as the effort roll-up, we're only at 75% complete. We're over budget, but some tasks have not been started, and other tasks are already over budget. So a percent complete, according to effort, is 75%. However, if you compare that to the earned value metrics, you're still getting the same type of information, but you're getting more accuracy. And specifically, look at the CPI. The CPI is less than 1. I'm going to go over budget. Okay. Now that's pretty telling because I'm already over budget, but what the roll-up of the planned hours and the percent complete doesn't tell you is that some projects, there's some tasks that haven't even started yet. Okay. So earned value very clearly says you're going to go over budget. And by the way, you're behind schedule because you haven't completed the tasks that were supposed to be completed based on your current date structure. All right. However, if you look at the earned value percent complete, you'll see that according to earned value, I've actually spent enough or done enough work to technically be 85% complete. Why is that much different than the percent complete here? It's because it's taking cost consideration into this percent complete value. What happens is the system itself figures out what your planned value is. How much should you have earned by this point in time? Okay, that's all based on the assignment, the cost of the user, and the time frame. Okay. Then it figures out what your actual cost is from timesheet data, right? How much time have you put on the system, and what is your actual cost? So now you start getting into the different pieces of the earned value metrics that tell you information on the CPI and SPI. The planned value minus the actual cost gives you your budget variance. Okay, so I am over budget. That I know. The cost index is very telling as well. Likewise, I should have earned by now 36, but I've actually burned 48, so I'm behind on my cost. If I hadn't spent so much time or used expensive resources, I may still be on track with my budget and my cost, but I still may be behind schedule because I haven't finished things at a certain date. Okay. When you take the earned value, this is how much I should have earned. Or the planned value is how much I should have earned. Earned value is what the system recognizes that I had planned that I actually did finish. Okay, and this is the actual cost is what I've done over and above that. To try and help illustrate what all these cost values are, I threw together a graphical dashboard that compares the assignment cost, which is the planned value, okay, across this time frame, and what I actually did timesheet-wise. And the earned value basically says, okay, I can earn this much from this. I can earn up to what, 7,000 this semi-month, about 75,000 or 7,500 this semi-month. I went way over on budget here, so I can only earn 8. So you can see that I've done work to try and catch up where I can, but my original plan, I'm varying quite a bit from my original plan. And what these cost numbers do is give you insight into what your plan was versus actual. Okay. So if you look at all the effort that's been completed up until this point, it does make sense that we're at 85% complete. Okay. However, we know we're going to go over budget and we're behind schedule. And this 75% complete up here is a bit misleading because we're not, this makes it actually look worse than we are. But the 85 means that we've got enough work, we're just behind schedule. Okay. So earned value, it is a pretty complicated topic, but I always like to look at it as, like I said, CPI and SPI. If it's less than 1, we're in trouble, and we need to replan stuff as much as we can. Okay. Another topic that you can use as a project manager, and this really goes for people who are using estimated and remaining, because you can't get the remaining hours per person, you may feel the need to update the plan of hours, reassign people different hours so that you can figure out what is left based on pulling individual assigned hours or planned hours per person. And you can do that by moving estimated hours into planned hours. It's available at the bottom of your project plans. So if you're really far off budget like this one is, at some point in time you can just say update planned hours from estimated hours, and it'll copy everything over and reset your plan. Okay, but the trouble with that is you don't want to lose what the actual plan was, and that's where baselines come in. And if you're not familiar with the term baseline, it's really just a way to take a snapshot of what the plan was. So if I want to create a baseline here, all it does is I'm giving it a name called initial baseline. And I save it. I can't see what this plan is. All I know is it saves a copy of what the original plan is in this baseline column. So now if I'm getting to the point where I'm like, okay, the estimated hours, I really just need to reset everything, I can click this little checkbox. I want to reassign everything task-wise. Say, yes, that looks good. Close this window. You'll see now that I've got everything sort of reset here. But I haven't lost my original plan. It's still a baseline, and you can see the variance and where things started shifting around. Okay. When I change my plan, I've also now changed some of my earned value because my percent complete changes. My earned value is changing just because I've reset the plan, reset the date frames to get things done. Okay. So the baselines are a useful tool when you feel the need that you're really getting off track. You need to keep a plan copy and be able to reset the plan hours and keep going forward. Okay. Now, when you do a snapshot, you can run a variance report, and the variance report really just gives you a delta report. It takes a little getting used to read through it, but it does show you what changed. When did it change? Okay. You can take multiple baselines, and the nice thing about this baseline capability is you can actually compare 2 different baselines together. so that you can see, what happened between January and February if you were taking monthly baselines, for example. So it's a useful tool. A lot of people are not using this feature, believe it or not, but it is very useful because it gives you that sort of snapshot in time for reporting type thing. Oh, and we already talked about this. So so that's budget, schedule, and some earned value topics. And then the last aspect of the project management I said is customer satisfaction. There's really no nice way to automatically do any customer satisfaction type measurements in OpenAir because it's a subjective topic, right? You are gauging based on interaction with the customer whether they're happy or sad. So there are ways that you can do it, and you can make it a visual in the system by setting up a custom field that you maintain on the project, for example, or maybe it's on the client, wherever you think it's the easiest to see it. And the nice thing is a lot of stuff, that if you just want to see it in the list of projects, you can actually add HTML coding to the values in that drop-down. Now the values themselves look a little strange, but when they're displayed on the web, you can see how it just interprets the HTML into the right colors. So like this value green is literally, this is the value I pick in the drop-down. And it comes up with a nice green, and it's very easy to see visually as long as there's no color blindness conflicts, whether somebody's on track or not. Okay, so just a little tip there. You can kind of customize a little bit the information for a very visual impact as you're looking at data. So let's talk about wizards. Okay, so I just talked about budget, schedule, earned value, and the customer sat option. But what about wizards? There is a wizard out there for task management, a little known wizard. It's on the home page and called the Bulk Task Change Wizard. And the reason it's not used very often is I find that, one of the rules of thumb with OpenAir is keep your project plan simple. People ask me, well, how many tasks are too many? Well, how big is your project? It's sort of a chicken and egg kind of concept. But there are times where even if you have a project that has 5 tasks on it, it's a pain in the butt to try to click each task open and assign people with the hours and maybe adjust the task types or services or whatever you're doing. And so I just wanted to kind of highlight what this wizard is that you can use, especially when it comes to assignments if you're assigning hours per person. What it allows you to do is you take a single project, and the challenge is it actually just uses a project task to copy to other tasks in that same project, which is why it's limiting. But it's still useful, especially when you have to assign the same group of people to a majority of tasks. Maybe not all of them, but a majority of tasks with the same level of effort. So you could actually come to this wizard, pick the task with the right assignments on it, and then click on next, and they'll say, well, what tasks do you want to copy those assignments to? And you can copy it to the next, 3, 4, whatever tasks you want. And when you click run, it will actually do the assignments for you. So a big time saver, especially when there's sort of redundant assignment activities that you need to do at the task level, especially for those of you who are using task assignments to control access to timesheets, okay? And you're not using project level assignments. So check it out. Next time you're kind of doing assignments, you may find that this is actually a nicer way to use the task change wizard. And the other wizard, which is actually much more popular, especially among you system administration people on the phone, is the bulk user change wizard. Now, the reason I'm highlighting this in the project management view topic is that quite often I find people are looking at the data as they log into the system the very first time. They go to the projects module, and you still have columns that say notify project owner, notify assignees, that kind of thing. So it's these columns of data that you never really need to reference. It's just the way the system came defaulted. Okay. There are always a lot of ways that is a best data view for your project managers. And specifically, as you saw that I was going into my system, you'll see that I'm looking at this data view where I've got all the earned values and the hours and the percent complete. I don't have anything about the different fields that are in my project form. I don't have the project owner on here. I'm really just looking at like statistics type thing, right? And likewise, if I go into my outline view, you'll see here I don't have assigned people on here. I have the hours information, the percent complete. I don't have things like task type or anything showing up here. Okay, these are customized views, and many of you have had people they can customize their own view, but a lot of people may not take the time to do that. And for you to help them or set expectations of this is what a PM should be looking at, you can actually use this bulk change wizard and pass a customization from a person who's got a nice configuration, or maybe yourself, out to people and just push it out to people as an initial data view. And you'll see there's a lot of options, like here's that outline task view, here's the user task view, the project list, the different stages. Very easy to customize the view and push it out for people so they have at least an initial good view, and then give them the option to maybe change it later. So another tip for your project managers out there. Now with the reporting, there's two aspects to reporting that I think helps project managers. One is the project dashboard. Now the term dashboard does not mean graphics. It means a quick reference to run reports that filter on your project data. So there's some best practices regarding project dashboards because the reports themselves have to be project-centric. They can't be user-centric because it's going to filter on the project data. Information that's very useful to put on the project dashboard, maybe a financial status report, the time people have spent on each task, because all of that information is rolled up when you look at the tasks, to be able to see that 7 people are worked on this task and the hours spread accordingly. Plan versus actual reports, those are all very helpful. And if you're not familiar with what the dashboard is, it's this first link. And if you don't see this link on your project form when you open it up, talk to your system administrator. It's something that you can turn on per project stage. Okay. So here's quite a few reports that I've written that I use to pull information according to the project I'm working on. And last is, don't forget the graphical dashboard. Many of you have talked to me over and over again, and you know I'm very big on this area. There's just something about seeing a picture that says a lot of information and tells you a lot of information about your project. And specifically, I think the graphical dashboard is very good for your budget management aspects, meaning how much did I expect to burn this month and how much have I burned this month. So that's the first example here on the left-hand side. How much do we expect to spend time-wise with a client, and how much have we finished? This could be maybe your project manager's list of projects, or a project manager could set up individual tasks or dashboards for their critical projects, their big projects. How many hours did I expect my team to spend this week on the task, and how much have they actually spent? In the example that I have on the screen here on the right-hand side, you can see that my resource plan was way, way, way too low. My team is really busting it out, and they're doing a lot of effort, okay? So do I need to readjust my plan? Are we really, in bad shape because we're so understaffed or we underestimated the work, or we're just finishing up very quickly and we're going to pull all the timelines in? This gives you a lot of information that you can see numbers on the screen, but a graph that you're joining. And if you want any more information, please don't hesitate to post something on the OpenAir Users LinkedIn group, to contact us directly at Top Step, and we also tweet weekly tips for OpenAir users. So definitely give us some feedback. We'd love to hear back from you if there's anything specific you'd like us to talk about. Thank you, everyone, for coming.